Hey guys, I'm making this screencast to help walk you through a few of the basic principles for the math portion, both calculator and non-calculator part of the PSAT. So let's get started. First question you might have is, what's the difference between the two sections? Why is there one section devoted for calculators and then another section like section 3 here where I'm not allowed to use a calculator? And one of the simplest answers is that there will be questions on this section where you're not allowed to use a calculator that could just easily be plugged into a calculator and solved. I'll use example 3 or number 3 right here as a prime example. There are plenty of applications that you can have on a usable calculator for PSAT that can just really make this problem very simple in a matter of seconds. Whereas if you don't have a calculator, knowing how to solve that system of equations there is really what they're testing out to see. So for the non-calculator section, there's going to be background information that they're checking to see, do you know? Like, for example, do you know how to handle a system of equations like in number 3? For example, on number 3, I might consider multiplying this bottom equation by 8 and getting x minus y equals, let's see here, 8 times 9 is 72, so maybe 152. I'm going to ballpark that. And multiplying the top equation by 4, and you get 2x minus y equals 40, and then just maybe change the sign of each term in that second equation and solve it out, eliminating the y's, and you get x equals, looks like negative 1, what's that, negative 112, okay? And automatically I can stop right there and say, okay, looks like option A is going to be my answer. They're checking to see on a non-calculator portion if you've got the requisite step-by-step approach to problems like that could otherwise just be plugged into a calculator. Another thing you're going to want to consider in the PSAT math sections, both the calculator and non-calculator version, is all these word problems. I mean, if I scroll through here, you're going to see 1, 2, 3 word problems usually on every page, right? And that could be a frustrating experience. Because oftentimes we get nervous about word problems and we kind of think, okay, what do I do? Let me pick one here that's just a typical. Number 9 is pretty typical right here. This is really just a check of Algebra 1, to be honest with you. And you could sit here and spend a minute reading through the whole problem when, in fact, all you really should do is look at the answers and note that they're all in that form of y equals mx plus b, for example. That's a linear function right there. So this is a question that is given a real-world scenario, and it's asking you to model it by a linear function, okay? So in other words, when you read a word problem, you want to have a method, you want to have a structure, a technique, you want to figure out what they're asking, you want to assign a variable, write an equation, solve an equation, answer a question. That's our 5-step word problem solving method that we're used to talking about, in your Algebra 1 class. And for a problem like this where it says, what is the elevation of the road in meters at the point where the truck passes t seconds after entering the road, that's going to be the answer to that first question. What do they want us to know? So all 4 of these options right here are giving an expression for the elevation of the road. And then you would read through the rest of the problem where it says, okay, the road drops 4 meters in elevation for every 100 meters. So mentally, I'm envisioning a road right here, and for every 100 meters of length along the road, it's dropping 4 meters. Well, that's a right triangle. There's 100 from point to point. Every 100 meters along the road is dropping 4 meters in elevation. It says the road is 1,300 meters in elevation, and the truck is traveling at 16 meters per second. And so they're giving you this information, and they're really all they're wanting to know is what is the elevation of the road when you've got t seconds that it's passed. In other words, it's going 16 meters every t seconds. So drawing a picture can help. Knowing the form of what you're dealing with can help. The 1,300 meters was not so helpful because, look, all 4 of them involve that same amount. So the elevation drop is what we're looking for along the way. There's typical word problem techniques that you can apply. Look, there's number 5 is a word problem. Number 7 is a word problem. So having that 5-step method is important. Another thing that I want to clue you in on is that you look at a problem like number 6, and there's certain background information that they're not going to provide you. If you looked at the very beginning of the test, you notice that they gave you some reference material, some information that they don't expect you to have memorized necessarily. Number one, it's a great idea to have that memorized. But number two, if you don't have that memorized, that's okay. You can refer to it. But a problem like number 6 right here is an example where they're actually checking, hey, does he know what it means to be a solution to a quadratic equation? In other words, does he know the quadratic formula, right? Negative b plus or minus square root of the discriminant all over 2a. And so what they're doing in a roundabout way with a problem like number 6 is they're checking that background knowledge, that prior knowledge. Does he know the quadratic formula, for example? If you look at number 6, is which of the following is r minus s? They didn't come out and say, hey, please solve this equation. They're saying, what is the value of r minus s, where r and s are the solutions? Now, if you've spent much time in your Algebra 2 class, you know that when you subtract the individual solutions to the quadratic equation, right, because they already have the same denominator, we can combine like terms. That subtraction is going to get distributed to both of those terms, and it's going to become negative b plus the square root of the discriminant plus b plus the square root of the discriminant all over 2a. In other words, the b's are going to cancel out. You're going to have twice the discriminant over twice a, or square root of the discriminant over twice a. So then you'll end up with this is going to be the difference of your two answers. In other words, that's going to be your r minus s value. So just real quickly, knowing the quadratic formula can allow us to say, okay, well, what's the square root of the discriminant over a in this case? And you'll notice that each of these denominators is all 2, which is our a value. So really, this question boils down to, do we know what the discriminant is? And it's a veiled question, and the PSAT loves to ask these veiled questions. They're not going to come out and say for number 6, hey, student, what's the discriminant of this quadratic equation? Right? Instead, they're going to ask it in a roundabout way, and it'll be your job to say, oh, yeah, I remember the discriminant. It's b squared minus 4ac. And then you can just plug and chug. So problems like that. Let's scroll down to, I want to get down to the calculator portion now, because in this section, they aren't going to ask any questions, or very many questions, if any, that could easily be plugged in to a calculator. Like you will very rarely see like a system of equations on this 4th section right here, because you could typically just plug that in. Instead, what they're going to do is they're going to be asking more theoretical questions, okay, that aren't going to be solved by the use of a calculator. They're just going to be aided by the use of a calculator. Okay. Actually, look at number 5 there. I'm wrong right where I stand. This is a simple set of equations that if I were working this, I'd plug that into my calculator and have the answer in 5 seconds, just because it's very simple. And to be honest with you, I'm surprised that they have that on there. But bully for me if I've got the calculator chops to handle that. If you look at I want to find, there we go. I was going to say, we passed an example a minute ago about where there was a chart. Interpreting information, interpreting the data from a chart is something that we really, the calculator is not going to help us that much to do. Like if you look at number 9 right here where it gives us this scatter plot, it says, what is the width in inches of the envelope represented by the data point that's farthest from the line of best fit? You're not going to have time, those of you that have had statistics, you're not going to have time to plug in, all 12 of those data points and find a line of best fit. You're going to have to approximate it. You're going to have to ballpark it. It probably looks something like that. And so when it says the point that's farthest from that line of best fit, they're wanting you to make sure you realize, oh, that's that point. Okay. So they're just checking. In this case, I don't have to have a calculator at all. They're just checking, does he know what a line of best fit is? And then, can he interpret those results? Similar to the rainfall example that I think we saw earlier, right up there. It's really just asking, hey, does he understand what slope is? This question saying, what's the greatest change in monthly rainfall? So in other words, which line segment has the greatest slope? And so we would say, oh, that's going to be between September and October, and we would calculate that slope accordingly. Okay, so a lot of the questions, even though it's a calculator portion, we won't necessarily need a calculator to solve. There's a linear modeling question right there. There's a proportion question right there. Lots of this stuff is based on your Algebra 1 and your Algebra 2 classes. So there's another bar chart. There's another scatter plot talking about a negative association that's nonlinear. And so a lot of this material you guys will be able to have gone through in your algebra classes and perhaps in your geometry class. The final thing that I'll say, and I know this video is running short on time here, is when you talk about the section where it's not going to be a let me get down to an example real quick here. Scrolling down. There we go. When you get into a section like what you guys have already been described as your free response section, when you're filling in that grid, these questions are going to be more where the calculator could be helpful, but also a drawing could be helpful. So in this section, you don't have the benefit of using process of elimination, but you do have the benefit of being able to use your calculator accordingly. So I hope this helps. I know I didn't go through and like work every problem, but at least giving you an overview of the difference between the section that has a calculator and the section that does not. So thanks very much for watching and good luck.